So last night, as I do so many nights, I was browsing aimlessly through Netflix and felt in the mood for a documentary. So I looked into the documentaries tab and found the documentary Bully. And I don't normally do this, but I have to talk about this movie because it was amazing and moving and just incredible. Bully follows 5 families throughout the course of a school year as they deal with their children being relentlessly bullied. Now, when it talks about bullying, it isn't the kind of bullying you think of when you think of, say, A Christmas Story or any of those old classic school movies. It's not some kid saying, hey, meet me behind the back locker and I'm gonna beat you up. This isn't kids being physically abused, necessarily. There is some physical abuse involved, but the bullying here is largely psychological, and it drives these poor kids to their limits. 2 of the kids commit suicide, 1 of them drops out of school, and 1 of them gets put in jail because one day she's had enough and pulls out a gun, not meaning to shoot anybody, but just to tell everybody that she's had enough. And she gets put on something like 26 counts of having hostages, of a kidnapping situation. And this documentary is so prescient and timely and important because bullying is something that is very close to home for just about everyone. Last year, 2 kids at my local high school committed suicide. The brother of one of the boys who committed suicide has come out since then and has told everyone his story, his perspective on what happened. And it's just heartbreaking. I mean, whenever something like this happens, it's the end of a life too soon because people were just cruel repeatedly. And it really is like psychological torture. It's like when you send your child to school, you're sending them to Guantanamo Bay. Maybe they won't come home with bruises, maybe they won't come home bleeding, but they will come home hating themselves. And these days with the internet and cell phones, the torture doesn't stop when you leave school. Torture follows you home. Now, I had some experience throughout my school years of being bullied, but not nearly as much as most kids because I was homeschooled. And every time something comes up about bullying, I just feel more and more glad about that fact. Because I was an ugly teenager, I was overweight, I had acne problems. Because of the acne problems, I was taking steroids that made my face puffy, so my eyes were tiny. These eyebrows obviously aren't doing anything for me. So I can't imagine if I had been exposed every day to the kind of kids that go to public school, which is just normal kids. But it really does seem like when you send your kids to school, it becomes like that famous psychological experiment where they told some people that they were jailers and some people that they were prisoners just arbitrarily, and those people immediately took on those roles. I think that there is definitely a compound complex that gets put into kids when they go to public school or private school. This is a problem across the board. Maybe the most depressing thing about this documentary is that it doesn't offer a solution. The solution that it offers is that kids need to be nicer to each other, or that faculty need to start enforcing rules more. But when it comes right down to it, we've been hearing the same thing for so many years and nothing has changed. I definitely recommend watching this documentary. It's very well assembled and tells a very compelling and very heartbreaking story. The only real complaint I had about this movie was that it seemed like the filmmaker only had one lens, and so it would go in and out of focus like 10 times every shot, which isn't super detracting to the content of the story, but if you're someone who is really obsessive about visuals like I am, it can just get a little bit on your nerves while you're watching. My favorite part of the movie, I would have to say, is at the very beginning when the credits are rolling. The camera is set up on the school bus and it's just watching the kids file onto the bus and then ride down the road. And a version of Wheatus's Teenage Dirtbag comes on, sung by this choir, and it sets the tone for the whole movie. It's beautiful and heartbreaking. Now, the goal of the filmmakers with this movie was to have it shown as widely as possible because it's so powerful, and I think so many kids need to hear the message that it has to give. But apparently the MPAA gave it initially an R rating because of language, and this is just kids swearing at each other and beating each other up and calling each other fag and bitch and things like that. And so the NPAA gave it an R rating, which means that no kids are going to be allowed to see it and it can't be shown in most schools. So a petition went out to change the rating from an R to a PG-13, but the MPAA wouldn't budge. And so the studio was like, okay guys, here's what we'll do. We'll give it a not rated rating, which meant that it could be shown at schools, but the problem then is that most theaters don't carry unrated films. In addition to that, this film came out in 2011 and is only now arriving on DVD, Blu-ray, and Netflix. There are some brutal moments in this movie, and it's not for the faint of heart, but I think that everyone really needs to see this. I've seen documentaries about how the school system is not set up well for kids to learn. I've seen documentaries about how the food at schools is terrible. But this documentary is the one that affected me the most because it's the one that requires the most fundamental change. And furthermore, until this bullying problem at least dissipates, we're not going to be able to improve the educational quality, and it won't matter that the food quality might improve because kids will still be killing themselves because other kids are torturing them on a daily basis. This has been a movie review. Thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day and don't forget to be awesome.